All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. We're doing another deep dive today.
Always exciting to dive in.
Yeah, and today we're looking at a guide, actually, for tradespeople thinking about moving to Australia.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like, it's sort of like if you're a plumber or electrician thinking about making that big move down under.
Yeah,
It's a big decision.
absolutely.
And this is kind of a guide that's supposed to give you all the need-to-know info.
Right.
So first up, one of the things that really jumped out at me is that Australia's got a massive skills shortage right now.
I've heard about this, yeah.
Yeah, like they really need skilled tradespeople.
Yeah.
It's not just like a little thing.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It
Yeah.
looks like from this guide, they need people in construction, electrical, plumbing, mechanics, like all across the board.
Yeah, and they're saying it's because of all the infrastructure projects and housing developments that are going on.
Makes sense. A booming economy needs people to build it.
Time to talk those juicy salaries. What are we talking about here?
Get ready, because electricians, carpenters, they're pulling in, 150,000 to 200,000 AUD a year.
No way. That's incredible.
And that's just the average.
And another big one that the guide stresses is getting your qualifications recognized.
Oh, right, because your training might not just transfer over automatically.
Exactly. So like if you're a qualified electrician in your home country, that doesn't automatically mean you can just start working in Australia.
Right.
You've got to go through this process with Trades Recognition Australia, which is TRA.
Okay.
And there are organizations like VitaSys that handle these assessments.
So basically, they make sure your skills match up with Australian standards.
Yeah, and they might even tell you you need some extra training or assessments depending on your trade.
Right. So it's not just a rubber stamp. You've got to actually prove you're up to snuff.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you've got licensing to think about.
Oh, yeah. Licenses are a whole other can of worms.
They really are. And like the guide uses electricians and plumbers as examples. They need specific certifications to work in Australia. And those can actually be different depending on which state you're in.
Wow. So it's not just one national standard. It's like a whole bunch of different ones.
Exactly. So you really got to do your homework on that front too.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Okay, so let's say you've got your qualifications sorted. The next big hurdle is visas.
Ah, yes. The visa process, always a fun one.
It can be a bit daunting, but the guide does a decent job of breaking down the options.
Okay.
So there's this thing called the Skilled Migration Program, which has different visa categories, like the subclass 189 and 190.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, those are both for skilled workers wanting to live in Australia permanently. But the 189 is the Skilled Independent Visa. So it's for people who aren't sponsored by an employer.
So if you're kind of going it alone and don't have a job lined up already.
Exactly, but you still need to meet a bunch of criteria like having your skills assessed, proving your work experience, and showing that you're proficient in English.
Right. So you can't just show up and say, I'm skilled, hire me.
Yeah.
You've got to have the paperwork to back it up.
Exactly. And then if you're maybe thinking about a shorter stay, there's the temporary skill shortage visa, which is subclass 482.
Okay. So that one lets you work in Australia for a specific period.
Exactly. So you could, try it out for a few years and see how you like it.
Right. That makes sense.
But then there's another big question that comes up for a lot of people. What about family?
Yeah. If you're moving your whole life over, you don't want to leave your loved ones behind.
Exactly. And the guide actually addresses that. It says you can bring family members with you under certain visa categories.
Okay.
Yeah, like there's this thing called family unit under skilled visas. So it is possible to bring your spouse and kids, but of course they'll have their own requirements to meet too.
Right. Of course it wouldn't be that easy.
You've jumped through all those hoops. You're
Yep.
in Australia. You're ready to work. What's the work culture like?
That's a good question because every country has its own way of doing things.
Well, the guide says that safety, punctuality, and teamwork are super important on Aussie job sites.
Okay. So pretty standard stuff, but I guess they really emphasize it.
Yeah. And they're not kidding about safety. Like workplace safety regulations in Australia are really strict.
Makes sense. I mean, nobody wants to get hurt on the job.
Exactly. And it's not just about following the rules. It's also about that Aussie culture of looking out for each other.
Yeah, mateship and all that.
Exactly. And the guide also mentions that there are unions and professional organizations like the CFMEU that can provide support and advocate for your rights.
Well, that's good to know, especially if you're new to the country and not sure how everything works.
Yeah, so you've got some backup if you need it.
So we've talked about the skills shortage, the salaries, the qualifications, the visas, the work culture. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. And we're just scratching the surface here. This deep dive is really just a starting point.
Right, because everyone's situation is going to be different, and there's always more to learn.
Exactly. But hopefully this has given people a good overview of what to expect if they're
Yeah.
thinking about making that move.
And one thing we haven't talked about is that in this day and age, having your career profile online can be a huge advantage.
Oh, yeah, like on those job sites where you create a profile.
Exactly. And there are platforms specifically for that sort of thing, like Cincy.me, where you can have your resume, your skills, your experience all laid out and ready to go.
So you can apply for jobs before you even get to Australia.
Precisely. And you might even get headhunted based on your profile.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Just show up and have job offers waiting for you.
It can happen, and it's something to consider, especially if you're making such a big move. You want to be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a skilled tradesperson dreaming of living and working in Australia, there's definitely a path for you.
But do your research, get your qualifications sorted, and think about getting that online profile set up.
Great advice. And who knows, you might be enjoying those Aussie barbecues and beaches sooner than you think.
Cheers to that.
All right, thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.
See you then.
Bye.